If you've ever read the Bible, you may have noticed that many teachings focus on helping others, especially those in need. But have you ever stopped to think about how ancient texts, such as those in Leviticus and the teachings of Jesus in Matthew, continue to have such a relevant and transformative impact on our world today? Why does God, from the Old Testament onward, instruct us to care for the poor, to leave part of our harvest for the needy, and to not remain indifferent to the suffering of others? And what did Jesus mean when he said that helping those in need is like helping God himself? These are some of the questions we will deeply analyze throughout this video. We've divided this content into 4 short chapters, where we'll discuss the importance of charity in Leviticus, the teachings of Jesus in Matthew, how to apply these principles today, and inspiring examples of people who have transformed lives through charity. Let's discover how these principles can reshape our view of charity and social justice in the modern world. If this interests you, you are very welcome. Go ahead and grab some water or coffee, find a comfortable spot, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more content like this every day. To start, I ask you this question: how can a book full of ancient laws and regulations still be relevant to us today? Leviticus is often seen as a set of outdated rules, but when we take a closer look, we find a deep commitment to social justice and caring for those in need. For example, Leviticus 19 verses 9 to 10 instructs us to leave the leftovers of the harvest for the poor and the foreigners. This law is not just an act of charity, but a framework to ensure that no one in the community is left destitute. As we examine the context in which these laws were written, we realize that they were designed to create a society where compassion and mutual responsibility were the norm. In a time without social welfare systems as we know them, these laws served to protect the most vulnerable and ensure that everyone had access to the basics for living. It was a way to guarantee that justice and mercy were woven into the fabric of daily life. But why is it important for us today to understand these laws? In truth, they reflect an eternal principle: the responsibility to care for one another, especially for the marginalized. Even in a modern society with welfare systems, the spirit of these laws challenges us to go beyond the bare minimum and truly care for those in need in our communities. Moreover, Leviticus teaches us about holiness and integrity in how we treat others. Justice for the needy was not just a matter of voluntary charity, but of holiness and obedience to God. This perspective challenges the modern notion that charity is optional or secondary. Instead, it reminds us that social justice is central to spiritual life. Another fascinating point is the idea of equality that emerges from these texts. By requiring the Israelites to leave a portion of their harvest for the poor, Leviticus establishes a principle of generosity that challenges the norms of personal accumulation and exclusive ownership. This is a concept that remains relevant today as we discuss the distribution of wealth and resources. In the end, we see that applying these principles is not just about following rules, but about cultivating a compassionate and generous heart. Leviticus, then, calls us to a standard of living where social justice is inseparable from our faith and daily practice. It serves as a reminder that, even in our modern times, the needs of others should be a priority in our lives. What did Jesus truly mean when he said, "Love your neighbor as yourself"? In the context of the Gospel of Matthew, this statement goes beyond a simple moral command. It is a radical call to a life of selflessness and service. Jesus didn't just teach about helping the needy. He lived it daily, healing the sick, feeding the hungry, and welcoming the outcasts. In Matthew 25 verses 35 to 40, Jesus makes it clear that caring for the needy is equivalent to caring for him. "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink." Here, Jesus identifies his presence with the most vulnerable, elevating the practice of charity to an act of worship and direct obedience to him. It's a complete paradigm shift from what many believed about helping others. But why was this vision so radical? In Jesus' time, social status and religious barriers often determined who was worthy of help. Jesus challenged these conventions by associating true spirituality with serving others, regardless of their position in society. He presented a new kind of community, one where love and justice knew no boundaries. Moreover, Jesus' teachings in Matthew also highlight the importance of the intention behind acts of charity. It's not just about fulfilling a social obligation, but about truly seeing and responding to the dignity and needs of others. This is a call for all of us to examine our own motivations and ask ourselves if we are truly living up to this high standard of love and compassion. Another fascinating layer of Jesus' teachings is how he connects social justice with the kingdom of God. In Matthew 6 verse 10, in the Lord's Prayer, he teaches us to pray, "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." Here, Jesus suggests that God's will is for the justice, peace, and abundance of heaven to be reflected on earth through our acts of care and compassion. So, how can we live out these principles today? It's not just about grand, visible acts of charity, but about the consistency and faithfulness in serving those around us. Every act of kindness, every moment of empathy, contributes to bringing God's kingdom to earth. Finally, Matthew challenges us to look beyond our own needs and consider the impact of our actions on the well-being of others. In a culture that often values self-sufficiency and personal gain, Jesus' teachings call us to a broader, more compassionate view of life, where helping others is an expression of God's love within us. In a world full of inequalities, how can the principles of Leviticus and Matthew be put into practice today? The truth is that the modern challenges of poverty, exclusion, and injustice are not so different from biblical times. However, applying these principles requires creativity and commitment from Christians. Let's start by looking at our local communities. There are countless opportunities to serve and help, from food banks to refugee support initiatives. But more than that, we are called to create environments where everyone is welcome and their basic needs are met. This is the spirit of Leviticus in action, a community that cares for its most vulnerable members. On the other hand, Jesus' call in Matthew challenges us to broaden our vision of charity to include justice. It's not enough to just relieve momentary pain. We must also seek systemic changes that remove the causes of poverty and injustice. This might include advocating for policies that promote equal opportunities and access to essential resources like education and healthcare. One practical way to apply these principles is through conscious consumption. The concept of justice in Leviticus leads us to consider not only what we give to others, but also how our daily choices, such as what we buy and from whom we buy, can positively or negatively impact others' lives. This is an aspect of justice that is highly relevant in our globalized economy. Moreover, Jesus' words in Matthew inspire us to live a life of practical compassion. This could mean dedicating time to listen to and emotionally support those who are struggling, or being intentional about building relationships with people from different backgrounds and stories. True compassion begins with the willingness to see the other, to recognize them, and to respond to their needs in meaningful ways. Another important aspect is education and awareness. Teaching our families, friends, and communities about the importance of helping those in need can create a culture of generosity and care. This also includes challenging preconceived ideas about poverty and charity, promoting a deeper and more empathetic understanding of others' circumstances. Our commitment to these principles can also be expressed in how we use our financial resources. Regularly donating to organizations that promote social justice and alleviate poverty is a concrete way to live out biblical teachings. But it's not just about how much we give. It's about the consistency and intentionality in supporting causes that align with the principles of Leviticus and Matthew. Finally, it's crucial to remember that the application of these principles is not an isolated task, but a communal mission. We must join together with others to create a greater impact, whether through our churches, community organizations, or volunteer groups. Together, we can accomplish more than we ever could alone. How does the application of biblical principles of charity and social justice truly impact lives? Let's explore some inspiring stories of transformation that demonstrate the power of these actions. Consider the story of George Muller, a 19th century Christian evangelist who, inspired by the principles of Matthew, dedicated his life to caring for orphans in Bristol, England. Without ever asking for donations, Muller relied on divine provision and, throughout his life, cared for more than 10,000 orphans. His story is a living example of faith in action, showing how a life dedicated to caring for the needy can have a lasting impact. Another powerful story is that of Mother Teresa, who, driven by Jesus' teachings on loving and serving the poor, founded the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta, India. Her tireless work with the sick and dying, often considered untouchables by society, exemplifies how the principles of Matthew can lead to extraordinary dedication in serving others. In the contemporary context, we have the example of the Christian organization International Justice Mission, IJM, which works to combat modern-day slavery and exploitation worldwide. Inspired by a vision of biblical justice, IJM rescues victims of human trafficking and slavery, helping restore their lives and bringing perpetrators to justice. These stories remind us that the practical application of the principles of Leviticus and Matthew can lead to significant and lasting change. They show how a faithful commitment to charity and justice can transform communities and even nations. Additionally, there are examples of small churches and community groups that, inspired by the Bible, create support programs for the homeless, provide free legal assistance to immigrants, or help people break the cycle of poverty through education and financial support. These actions, though they may seem small compared to large organizations, are equally powerful. They demonstrate the impact of living out faith in a practical, daily way, showing that anyone can make a difference. The stories of transformation also show us the importance of perseverance. Many of the greatest examples of charity and justice began with small steps and grew over time to have a significant impact. This encourages us to start where we are, with what we have, trusting that our actions can contribute to a more just and compassionate world. Finally, these inspiring stories challenge us to reflect on what more we can do in our own lives. How can we use our gifts, talents, and resources to help those in need and promote justice in our communities? As we explore the biblical principles of Leviticus and Matthew, it becomes clear that charity and social justice are more than just good deeds. They are profound expressions of our faith and commitment to God. These scriptures call us to live compassionately and justly, responding to the needs of those around us with a generous heart. In the end, we are challenged to reflect. Are we truly living out these principles in our daily lives? How can we continue to grow in our capacity to love and serve others, following the example of Jesus? May each of us find new and meaningful ways to apply these teachings, bringing hope and transformation to a world in great need. If this content touched you positively, leaving a like is the best way to express your gratitude and encourage us to produce more content like this. I also invite you to share the greatest lesson you learned from this video. Leave a comment with your reflection or something that touched you in a special way. I would feel very honored and happy to know how this message impacted your life. See you in the next video.